Well, hi everybody. Thanks for coming. We're going to talk about the long-range plan for sustainability at Boy Scouts of America. And I'm going to talk about it in three different pieces. I'm going to start with a few slides on the big picture so that we all are on the same page, so to speak. And then talk a little bit about what we could maybe do. And then I will share with you sort of the first rev of the long-range plan draft, and would love to just have a dialogue about each of those pieces if you'd like, so we can just have a discussion. So in the past couple of days, we've heard a lot about sustainability, and I think we pretty much know what it is, and we know why it's important. So what I'm going to talk about is how we can move the needle. How can Boy Scouts of America really make a difference? Because that's really important, I think, to all of us. And but before I get into that, I'd just like to say that we're each going to have our own sort of conversion experience as it relates to sustainability. If you haven't already had one, maybe you don't know what I mean. If you have had one, then you know exactly what I mean. It's the point at which it sort of goes from something your brain says is logical to something your heart says you have to do. So that's where I am now, where my heart says I have to do this. And 6 years ago, I didn't know anything about this. So I was a very unsustainable person. So I want to tell you my story just to get started. But before I do that, how many of you have had your conversion experience? And this is a heart thing now where you feel like you have to do this. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's awesome. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. So let me tell you my story. It happened 6 years ago now. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and so I'm a very busy guy, and so my time is extremely important to me. So my worldview was whatever I could do to be as efficient as possible, to get as much stuff done, keep things out of my way, that's what I would do. So I wasted paper, I wasted electricity, I wasted water. I wasn't focused on that. And my son, John, who's now 23, he was 18 at the time, had just gotten his Eagle, and he had a whole different set of habits than I had. And I sort of knew what he was doing, but I didn't really understand. And so I ignored it, all through the summer, and then we finally started, running into each other's habits, and I was getting frustrated over his. So we had a couple of very heated discussions, and in that process, my whole worldview began to change, because his worldview was, it's not about my time, it's about how I use these precious resources that I have to use, and I don't want to waste them. So over a period of a month or so, I came to really embrace his view. And once that happened, I could not go back. I could not ignore it anymore. I had to do something, and I had to do the biggest thing I could think of to do. And so it took a while to figure out what that was. But eventually, it struck me, this took 6 months, but eventually it struck me that what had happened was really sort of unusual. It was the reverse of what usually happens, where you teach your kids, and as a parent you teach your kids. Well, this time, the kid taught the parent, and I was ignoring all other inputs about this, but he got to me, and so that to me I think was sort of a sacred transaction, and so I realized that was the way to really move the needle, was to get kids to change the worldview of adults, their parents, and they would then change the worldview of their friends. And so that's sort of what happened to me. So you've heard about the power of one, and John Lanier talked about Interface Global and Ray Anderson. Well, here's this 18-year-old kid that, all by himself changed me, and as a result, with a couple of teams that I worked with very closely, we now have a Sustainability Merit Badge book, and we're now talking about a long-range plan for Boy Scouts of America. That's crazy. I mean, who would ever thought that would happen? So he did that. My son, 18 years old, John Harmon, he did that. So any of you in the room that are scouts and you're not 21 or whatever, or even if you are, I mean, you can do stuff. I mean, serious stuff. And all the adults in the room too, you can do stuff. So important stuff. So I just wanted to share that with you. Does anybody else want to just comment on their journey just for a second, if that prompted you? If not, we'll keep going. Okay, personal stuff. So let's just talk about the problem to start with here. So there are lots of ways to look at the problem, and I thought about this for over a year as well. And the problem, as we're going to talk about here, is that by 2050, the population is going to grow from 7 billion people to 9 billion people. And we've heard a little bit about this during the past couple of days, but this will create, just critical shortages of materials, food, water. It will create problems with waste that will cause serious health problems. And this is, and also climate change, if we don't change our habits. The adults of the world are struggling mightily with this statement, and it's gotten really politicized, which is really unfortunate, which has sort of rendered government sort of useless on these topics. And so, as I was trying to figure out what to do with what happened to me with my son John and my new worldview, I realized that I was a parent and I had a kid and hopefully grandchildren at some point, and we were watching as all these problems became clear, sort of in horror, because nobody was doing anything that I could see. And it seemed to me that if they were fixable at all, it would take generations or maybe hundreds of years of just really concentrated effort. So I started freaking out. So then I began to realize what I was supposed to do. And what I was supposed to do, and why I'm standing right here right now, is to try to replicate that transaction between my son and myself, where he changed me, and to do that as many times as was possible for me to impact. And so, Boy Scouts is the largest organization that I know of that I'm involved in, and that's where it happened for me. So it took another 6 months, but I woke up at 3 in the morning in 2009. I forget what month it was. But, the question just hit me, and this might have been a divine appointment as well, who knows. But, why not charter the Boy Scouts of America to develop and lead a sustainability movement for the world to follow? That was sort of the question that was sitting in my head when I woke up. And that's the same question that I wrestle with today, and 5 years later, that's why we're standing here. Why not? Why not? I mean, who better than us? So, the idea of teaching scouts and their leaders to live sustainably so that the kids can go home and impact their families and their neighbors and their towns, and then inspire corporations through their parents, or maybe through the kids coming to corporations to talk, that all became real. So that is sort of the problem and the opportunity and why we're talking about this. Does that make sense? So I just wanted to share with you how this started and how that can also be for you. One person sitting in this room, that you shouldn't walk out here feeling like you are off the hook. You should figure out what's the biggest thing you can do and go do it. So I want to show you another video here that will help explain what the problem looks like.
The ecological footprint is an accounting tool, not for money, but for ecological resources. So it compares how much nature we have and how much nature we use. Over the last 40 years, we've just had one planet. That's why the line of supply is very, very horizontal. Humanity has been continuously increasing its resource demand to the extent that by the mid-80s, we've started to use more than what nature can regenerate. And by 2007, humanity used about 30% more than what nature can renew. So we have been in global overshoot.
Overshoot can be thought of as living off of your credit card. You know, humanity's living off its ecological credit card. If we use more than nature can keep up with, we actually start to dip into the capital. We're starting to erode the actual natural capital that our life depends on.
Currently, if everyone on Earth lived as North Americans do, we would need 5 Earths. For everyone to live as Europeans do would require 3 Earths. In other regions, people are living beyond the capacity of 1 Earth as well. China and India are presently living just under the 1 Earth level, but given the rapid industrialization and economic growth of both countries, that is sure to change. What is likely to happen if these present global trends continue?
Even if we take just moderate projections from the United Nations and add them all up to one scenario, what we see is that by about 2050, we would be using about twice the capacity of planet Earth.
So obviously that's not going to work because we only have 1 Earth. So the question becomes, how do we get off of that up and to the right curve and get back down to using 1 Earth or less with the 7 billion to 9 billion people that we're talking about? So that's the question. So fortunately, we're not the only ones asking this question. There actually are hundreds of corporations that figured this out. I don't know, Don, you probably know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, Walmart was one of the first. And so there's a group called the World Business Council for Sustainable Development who has taken on the challenge of figuring out how to move to the yellow arrow instead of the bright red arrow. And they're doing it for a variety of reasons, but obviously business can't function the way it does today if there aren't enough resources to go around and people are fighting over water and food, and the economy will sort of get whacked out. So they have those drivers, but it's really business that's driving these changes. And you heard about Interface Global a little while ago, Ray Anderson. You've heard about Walmart quite a bit. Patagonia, there's lots of companies that are really early involved in this and making these changes. So I want to talk about, what can we do about this? I just wanted you to realize that we're not alone and we're not starting from scratch, okay? So this is a bit of an eye chart. I apologize for that part, but I wanted to just, it took me 2 years to figure out how to draw this, so I want to share it with you. It's page 87 in the Merit Badge book if you want to look at it longer. But so the question is, what's going on? So you've seen and heard about the concentric circles of people, planet, and profit. So I looked at that for a long time, tried to figure out what to do with that, and I just couldn't get below the picture into anything actionable. And so I finally came up with this, which, is there a pointer on this too? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so here are the people, here's the planet, and here is profit, or what I call prosperity. That's a little bit better word. And so what's really happening today is that the people have a whole set of needs, from sort of, the rudimentary needs to more sophisticated needs. Water and food and community are their first needs. Assuming they're healthy, then they, look for electricity and transportation, and we're all involved in stuff. So, where does that come from? Well, it comes from business, and businesses all over the world basically create products and services where they extract materials from the earth, and they produce things, they distribute them, we consume them, and then we dispose of them either directly into the earth ourselves or through some waste company. And so extracting this material and depositing this waste has been going on for thousands of years. And we're at a point now when we're using 1.3 to 1.5 Earths that we can't do that anymore because we're running out of materials, and we're poisoning ourselves with the waste. So the problems that this creates, are many. Plastic waste in the oceans. You've heard about the gyres the size of Texas. Electronic waste, going to Africa and other third world countries. Food waste, that's just ridiculous. Species decline, climate change. These are all problems that result from this cycle of consumption from new raw materials each time and then disposal without much recovery back into the earth in a toxic way. So does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about that? So that's sort of, the picture today and the problems associated with it. And so if you want to solve that problem, what on earth do you do? So let me just say one more thing here. So in the Merit Badge book, we cover all of the things that are in blue here. We picked the things that we thought the scouts and their families could impact, directly, and problems that they could understand and impact directly. We'll take these other white areas, which are sophisticated areas as well, and handle them on the websites, et cetera, in the future. So the blue is what's in the book, just so you know. So how do we fix this? Well, the solution is, and you've heard this already from Interface, the solution is to stop extracting material out of the ground and start using material that once was waste and turn it into raw materials. So I've heard this several times this morning already. The whole concept of waste has to go away. You cannot throw anything away anymore. You have to take whatever it is you're done with and either have somebody reuse it, or you have to get it recycled so that it is broken down into its component parts again so it can be used as material for the next new thing. So the economy can still run as it does, but it just doesn't get its resources out of the earth, and it just does not throw them back into the earth. So that's the first major thing that we have to do. So at the summit, we're talking about net zero energy, waste, water, CO2. At the summit, you're going to see, at the last Jamboree and the next Jamboree, you see this cradle-to-cradle cycle instead of the cradle-to-grave cycle, where all the waste going through the summit, with the exception of compost, was taken away to be used again as new material. So at the next summit, we're talking about this now, but we're going to have a focus on water consumption, food consumption, energy consumption, transportation, to figure out how to be more efficient with those things, and also to focus on how to get to net zero at the summit so that we don't use any more energy. We don't take energy from the outside sources. We generate it there on site. We don't take any waste away that doesn't get reused again, et cetera. So it's not that hard. That's a really simple way of looking at the problem and the solution. So we talk about conservation and we talk about sustainability. What's the difference? Well, this is not exactly correct, but it's close. Conservation is sort of all about what's going on here with the biosphere. The species that live in the biosphere and the biosphere itself. And sustainability that's necessary but not sufficient. Sustainability looks at the big picture of needs and consumption and how it gets made and where it comes from and what the impact of that is. So does that help sort of make sense? Okay, so that's it for the big picture. I want to now shift to what can we do as scouts? And so I want to set this up a little bit, just set the stage. So the first thing is, John Lanier just talked about legacy. And scouts have a tremendous legacy. It's an unequaled legacy of conservation. And this just sort of goes through, the past 10 decades, what kind of legacy we have left in the area of conservation. So again, this is not new to us. So I'll just let you read those on your own. But you can see there's a lot of recycling. There's a lot of garden creation. There's a lot of tree planting. And a lot of volunteer hours, which qualify us to take this on. The second legacy I want to talk about is a leadership legacy. You hear about this as well. The scouts are well prepared to go out and lead in lots of different areas, and so sustainability is really no different. And the last one is brand new, and that's really the gift of the summit, because it gives us a place to model climbing mountain sustainability, as Interface Global calls it, or getting to net zero wastewater, energy, and CO2. And the summit was, of course, founded on principles of sustainability. So we'll be using these jamborees as forcing functions to get the summit further and further toward net zero so that we can use that as best practice and example for all of Scouting and the world to look at. So as we talked about the session this morning with Matthew Sleeth, this song came into my head, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it. It's by Matthew West. It's called Do Something. And I just, you can read it if you want, but I just outlined in red the things that really hit me is, you know, if not us, then who? If not me and you, if not now, then when? I mean, that's really it. I mean, it's time for us to do something. So I think that says it perfectly. So we've done this before. Nobody's asking us to tackle sustainability like they did World War I and World War II, where the President of the United States asked the Boy Scouts of America to help with, you know, providing materials through recycling. Lots and lots of scouts were involved, you know, back in the, you know, 1917, 18 time frame, you know, 250,000 of them, you know, 1.5 million of them World War II. We've got, you know, an army of 4 million scouts and leaders right now that could be tackling this problem. So, you know, I've been thinking about this a long time. As I said, you know, this really could be Scouting's finest hour. This is where we call ourselves to this challenge. Nobody else has to ask us. We just realize that this is ours to do, and we get busy and we go do it. So my son John, you know, the last quote here is his, and I really like it. You know, he said that sustainability is the defining issue of his generation, really of all future generations. So I mean, we cannot dodge this. So I'm going to shift now to the big, hairy, audacious goal. And just we'll talk about this for a little bit. This is, you know, Rev 1 of the Sustainability Long Range Plan for Boy Scouts of America. And it's called Plan 2025. So when it was written, it was a 12-year plan. 2025 is sort of significant because 2050 is the big year. Everybody's talking about 9 billion people on a planet. This is halfway there. And it gives us something that we can work on and not run out of runway. So the goal is for BSA to be perceived as the leader in bringing families, businesses, and cities to net zero by 2025. Not a leader, the leader. And since we're all about kids, and we know that sustainability has to be kids educating parents, and then families educating other families, I think that should be our vision. So the strategy is to develop a long-range plan for 7 different areas. The first is for high-adventure bases and huge events. So we'll talk about each of these a little bit. The second is, you know, getting councils to become as sustainable as possible. The third is communications, you know, to communicate the message of what Scouting, you know, will be doing as it does it, so that our people are drawn to help us do this. Program, to modify slightly the program in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Venture, and Exploring to embrace sustainability beyond the merit badge. That was the starting point. To develop outreach outside of Scouting, and to develop service strategies outside of Scouting using all these resources. So we'll look at those in a second. This is basically 4 3-year planning cycles, and that's basically because the jamborees fit nicely every 3 years. So the 17 jamboree, the 19 jamboree is a world jamboree, 21 and 25 are national jamborees. If you take this in 4 3-year pieces, you end up with a jamboree right in the middle of each piece of the planning phase. So I don't know how we're going to do this exactly, but that's what audacious goals are about. You know, my thought is that getting to net zero waste at the jamboree in 2017 is doable. Getting to net zero energy, if we do What I'm hoping we'll do with Solar City is doable. And that's a great place to do it in front of the World Scout Organization. So we'll be net zero waste, net zero energy at that point. Net zero water is tougher, but because there are laws in place that keep us from doing certain things, but perhaps we can at least demonstrate things like rainwater reclamation, reverse osmosis, and drinking water, that's rainwater or was polluted and now cleaned up through RO. And I think we can probably make really good progress on becoming net zero CO2 somewhere in this 12-year period. So also, to try to get at least one net zero council in each of the regions by the Jamboree so that we can celebrate success and hold up great examples for other councils to try to emulate. And to include sustainability as either the theme or a main part of the theme for the 17 National Jamboree coming up and the World Jamboree in 2019. We haven't had a World Jamboree in the United States for, I think, 1964 was the last one I'm aware of. So this is a huge opportunity. So, what do you think? Is that crazy? That's where I thought I was. So, what I'd like to do now, if it's okay with you, is just going to go through these 7 areas that we talked about and just talk about maybe a starting point and some of the ideas. And we got about a half hour here or so left. Maybe we could do some Q&A or some comments on that, or if not, I'll just blast through them. We'll see how this goes. So first of all, we're working on setting up a national committee. This committee would report into the executive board of BSA. So it would be a new standing committee. We've been thinking about this for over a year now. We don't have a chairman yet. I'm doing strategy and long-range planning at this point. The green represents people that have accepted subcommittee chairman roles. So let me just go through the 7 subcommittees. So there's one on bases and events, which has to do with the high adventure bases and any big events that occur there, like jamborees. The second one is headquarters, facilities, and councils to get all of our buildings as sustainable as we can get them. The third is to communicate what we're doing to the outside world. We don't really talk to the outside world. We talk to ourselves mostly. But these are great challenges to take on and great accomplishments to stand up and talk about to get people to help us and to come in and join. Comment? Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of my big questions here in a minute is who wants to sign up to help? Because that's exactly what okay, good. Awesome. I was hoping you'd all do that. Yes? Oh, the question was, what about youth? Are we going to have youth on this committee? And the answer is absolutely. I would like to have some scouts, some probably venture, probably explorers, maybe some Cub Scouts. I don't really know yet. But in all these subcommittees, because your brains are working more clearly than our brains are, and we need your help. Thanks for the question. The fourth one is program. Obviously, there are some things we can do with the Cub Scout, Boy Scout crew, venture and explorer programs and awards, outreach, impacting the community outside of scouting in a really big way. So we'll talk about that. Service, same thing, huge impact in service. Don Mosley here with me from Walmart is the subcommittee chair for the service committee. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. And then partners. So we may add more, we may shrink down. Again, this is a lot of stuff, but the idea is to impact the organization internally and empower people to go out and impact the world externally. That's really what it's about. So this is the sort of organizational or the 4 or 5 projects under the bases and events subcommittee. So figuring out what to do with the summit and with Northern Tier and Philmont and Seabase, those are obviously things that need to be done. I don't know over what period of time. We got 12 years, or maybe we'll decide to push it out or pull it in. I don't know. These are just projects. And then the jamborees, we have 4 of them, we know when they're coming, so we need to sit down as a subcommittee when we get them pulled together and start brainstorming, what of these things should we do, shouldn't do, over what period of time, what's involved, sort of reverse engineer it. So I don't know all the details, I'm just throwing out stuff. But here's a starting point. 4 bases and events. The vision could be to make the summit a net zero city, using jamborees to drive best practices for councils to then utilize. So that seems like a pretty good vision for what to do with these sites. The strategy would be to engage strategic partners and commercial best practices, products and services, to bring the summit to net zero by some date, and to transfer that to the councils. So we already talked about what we might do in each of the jamboree years. So that's an example of sort of what the projects could be and what the starting point could be. And at this point, I back away and say, once we've got a subcommittee chair and we've got some people and we sit down and we start working on this, then they figure out what to do, and youth would be involved in this process on this subcommittee. So does that make sense as a first pass? Good. I was hoping you'd say yes. So the next one is the headquarters and councils sort of properties subcommittee. So we have a subcommittee chairman for that. His name is George Denise. George helped Don and I launch the merit badge at the Jamboree. He used to work at Adobe as sort of their chief sustainability officer and was largely responsible for all of their LEED Platinum and Gold buildings. So he knows building conversions better than most anybody I've ever met. He now works for Oracle, doing the same thing for Oracle, and he's working at Camp Cheeseboro, which is a great name, but that's a camp in Northern California, to make it sustainable. He was doing all that before I even met him. So I think he's a really good guy to head up, what do you do with offices and stores, and what do you do with camps? And my thought is that he should do that with his subcommittee at national first, so that they learn how to do it, and then we take what we learn there and we take those learnings to the councils. So that would be a really exciting subcommittee. So here the goal would be to convert all these properties to net zero by some time. And so you have to start by capturing the baseline for where they are right now. So we have to figure out how to do that, and basically, develop materials for councils to use, resources, best practice for councils to use. Figure out how to hook the council teams up. Those that want to do it, because the councils there'll be some that'll want to do it right now, some that'll say I think this is stupid, others that say not now, next year. So we figure out who's ready, and we work with them, and that creates success, which sort of rumbles through the organization, and other people want to do it sooner. So that's roughly how that could work. So any comments or questions on that one? Okay. Next one is communications. So a gentleman by the name of Bob Houghton has agreed to be the subcommittee chair of that. Bob was also at the Jamboree, helped us launch the merit badge. He was the founding CEO of Redemtech, which was one of the first e-waste recycling companies. And he personally put a lot of pressure on recyclers who dumped materials in the third world, and helped create a nonprofit called eStewards, which sets the standard for how corporations need to track their recycled material to make sure that they actually get torn apart and used again as new materials, as opposed to thrown in the rivers of Indonesia. So he's a great guy to be doing this, because he's starting a new company. It's top secret, so I can't tell you what they're doing, but it's in this field. And so he's challenged with figuring out how to communicate those strategies and that company and those services to the world. So he really wanted to do this subcommittee because he's right in the middle of social media and national business press. How do you get these messages out? So things in this subcommittee, the sustainability report, which we just saw this week, would be one of the tasks of this committee probably. Events like this as well. Report to the nation, report to the state, report to the city, those kinds of things. all communicating either internally or externally, what we're doing here. So that's a really important part. So the goal here really is to turn our sustainability focus into a very compelling, very persistent message to youth, leaders, partners in the public. I mean, people think about BSA now, they're all worried about membership policies. They should stop thinking about that and start thinking about this. It's all important, but this is really important. So you can read the strategy. We've already talked about some of the tactics. But the goal here really is to take all these things that we're doing, all these other subcommittees, and communicate successes and needs, effectively to the people that need to hear them. Okay, let me shift on to program, which is next. So we don't have a subcommittee chairman for the program subcommittee yet, but that will have to do with, looking at the Cub Scout program, the Boy Scout program, the Venture program, Explorer program, and all of the awards and recognitions in scouting. Just look at all those and say, okay, well, how do we incentivize and motivate and support sustainability in scouting through its current program? So we have a couple people that are interested in working on Cub Scouting and Venture, but I don't have a subcommittee chairman yet. So the goal here really, the vision here really is to grow membership in scouting. It's been shrinking, so to grow it and to increase retention and to get more strategic relationships and to get access to more resources and to have more impact and to have our brand, have a different, people have a different perception about the Boy Scout brand as we do these things. So the program will help make that possible. I guess I should go back as we go. So anybody in particular feel motivated to be involved in the bases and the sites, the high adventure bases and the Jamboree stuff? Brian, you're going to raise your hand, I'm thinking. Hey, Don, could you help me and get people to shout their name and just write them down for which committees? We'll get back to them. Is that okay? So for bases and events, so Brian Heller. So anybody else, just rattle off your name to Don real quick. I just looked at the clock and I thought I had more time than I have. So let's do that afterwards. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So after we're done, come over and talk to Don and I and tell us which of these you're interested in if you're interested. So let's go on. So that's program. This next is outreach. So this is the one I'm going to chair. Here I'm thinking about using mobile apps to let people self-assess where they are with their home, their business, their school against sustainability metrics, so they can see if they get an A, B, C, D, or F on these things. Can get a little report card, and then create a web store where they can go to any metric and find best practice or a service or product they could buy that would help improve their sustainability on that metric. So we basically start assessing how sustainable cities are, and we start measuring how much impact we have by showing them what they can buy and what they can do to get better. So we'll have database and look at things over time. So we can really show how much impact we're going to have. There's also a simulation game we're thinking about here where you become the mayor of a city and get to make choices about energy and waste and water, et cetera, to see how this really works, et cetera. The next one is the service subcommittee. This is the one Don's heading up. And it is, the purpose of this really is to leverage the resources in Boy Scouts of America, all the OA members, the NISA members, the Wood Badge members, all the scouting alumni. There's 50 million of those living. Putting those resources together with nonprofits that have great projects and using technology like Habitat for Humanity has, where you can go on to a BSA website and look up a project that you're interested in and see where it is and schedule yourself, and it'll tell you what you need to bring without having to talk to anybody. And just brokering these massive resources we have with massive projects that need to be resourced so that we can go out and really, really have an impact on key projects. So that's what Don's going to be working on. And the last one then is partners. So, we've got corporate donors. This is what John Stewart and Brad Farmer work on a lot. Corporate partners, individual donors, foundation donors, NGOs that want to team up on programs, and fundraising partners. Solar City is the first sustainability-oriented fundraising partner, so I'm working with them in California to try to get a deal cooked with them before the next national annual meeting. So that's just the first example of that. So these are the committees. We need scouts that want to help, so when we're done here in 5 minutes, and adults too, let's go talk to Don so we can see what you're interested in. The next thing we're going to be doing probably is to have a sort of a brainstorming charrette, if you know what that is, to sort of brainstorm all these things. Probably spend a couple of days off-site someplace and just sort of work through each subcommittee and figure out how it might work and sort of take a first pass at what we're going to do. So I don't know, that'll either happen before the year's out or early next year, but that's the next thing we've got to do. So you can see some of the things that we would tackle there. What are we going to do with the jamborees, the next two, what kind of timing on the national and council stuff, et cetera. And, finding a massive service project we can do with some NGOs for the 2025, jamboree, just things like that. Pretty fun stuff. And also finding subject matter experts in all these areas, water, waste, food, energy, transportation, et cetera. So I guess the last thing I'd like to just show you before we wrap up here is this was the original proposal that my first team of Eagles put together in 2010. These were 11 ideas that we submitted through the executive board into the Chief Scout Executive at the time. And I was just looking at these today. Number 11 or number 10 is the first one that we did, the merit badge. So Wayne Perry felt like that was really the first thing to do because it would get the language out and get everybody on the same page, which I think was a stroke of brilliance on his part. But other things that we said we might do are still sort of on the table as ideas. The first one has to do with selling things. So we did LED light sales, but the Solar City sort of education process is an example of that. What we were thinking there, collecting e-waste or pointing people to places where e-waste gets separated properly, was number 2. 3 and 4 were, adding a new role in the troop or in the pack or in the crew, the kids to focus on sustainability, so sort of a chief sustainability officer at the youth level, and to create sustainable troop or unit criterion, like a quality unit, a sustainable unit. Maybe you go from quality unit to sustainable unit, or maybe you have both, I don't know, but just an idea. So these are things that have to be done at national level, the green ones. The blue ones can really be done at the green ones are at the troop level. The blue ones are sort of council level things, I think. So scholarships for Eagle projects that are really good could be done at the council level. NISA projects, OA projects, that was sort of conceived of early on. A speakers bureau, content site. We're already working on some of that stuff. Zach's working on that. And then number 9 was the program stuff we talked about. Sustainable requirement options. Maybe you put segments around your rank badge, for water, waste, energy, CO2. That'd be a good idea. So I don't know, just things. So the idea was not to turn the program upside down, but to sort of integrate into it things that made sense. So bringing Hornaday and all the conservation stuff together under one place, that's just happened, so that's cool. So anyway, I think we were originally on a decent path, and so where we are now is to really flesh this out and do it. So I think that's it. So we got about a minute left or less for any questions or comments. So yeah, go ahead.
So I noticed on your outreach subcommittee that you had,
Yes, sir.
It was 100% online or app or
Yep.
technological. Is there a way to maybe add a person in that who goes out and does events?
Sure.
So people
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Oh, the question was, sorry, the question, do we have a mic that we can pass around? Maybe not. I guess we're going to go offline now. Can we just keep talking here, right? Okay. If we had a roving mic, that would really help. Will this? Okay, let's do that. There we go. You can just walk around with this.
Yeah.
No problem. Perfect. Okay. Is this guy on? So the question.
Yes, this one's on.
It's on the same frequency.
The outreach programs were all web-based, and the question was, could we do some events as well to do outreach? And the answer is absolutely. And that's a great idea. Because, there we go. Because, not everybody's going to be online, and it's a great way to get to young kids. It's a great way to get to young families. So, absolutely. Good suggestion. Other questions and comments, ideas? So what do you think, is a 2025 plan, is that too long, too short? Is that okay if you break it into 4 pieces? How does that feel, everybody? Yes?
I think in terms of getting all councils and camps NZ by 2025 is a little short, but
Yeah.
if you're down, we can totally make the push.
Yeah. Well, I don't expect to hit all these goals. If we hit them all, we set the bar too low. So, if we get to half or something, I'll be happy.
So I'm curious about ideas on how to get this merit badge into the curricula for summer camp, at all the summer camps, and how quickly that could be accomplished.
Good question.
Because I don't know how best to do that. It can't be finished at camp, but a lot of the material needs to be started somewhere.
So we did it this year at our council camps, and what we figured out is we could do as much as we possibly could without twisting any of the requirements at camp.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the spirit of Boy Scouts and developing that leadership and going out, we encourage them to go find a sustainability merit badge counselor to finish it,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of develops that, leadership and going out and striving to accomplish a goal, which I believe is one of the points in scouting that we try to accomplish.
Yeah, that's good. Because sustainability merit badge counselors are really not that hard to find because there's a lot of people involved in sustainability at work. And so if you just ask that question among the troop, who's in the environmental health and safety group, who's in the sustainability team, the green team, you've got candidates right there. So
One of the things, rather than focus on summer camp, most of our camps are year-round facilities.
Yep.
We need to focus on year-round program.
Yep.
If you could pull off a sustainability merit badge weekend and bring in the troops, bring in the masses, and bring in the counselors and the qualified people and the corporations, you could make it big and you could make it public.
Yep.
And you could make it happen.
That's a great idea. Awesome idea. So year-round program, doing sustainability merit badge weekends, all not just in the summer. Great. Okay. Other questions?
And I'd add
Comments?
I'd add that in addition to sustainability merit badge, for example, in the program side, we have first aid merit badge, but we also have first aid rank requirements for younger scouts before they get there.
Yeah.
So why don't we have sustainability
Rank requirements. Here we
10
go.
foot, second foot.
Well, that's one of the things you could add so that you get your little sustainability segment
Well,
around
that's
your
where
rank.
you're going to train and routine the practices for the younger kids
Yep.
prior to even thinking about having a merit badge conversation.
Yep. Okay. So a tenderfoot, second class, first class.
I think another great way to do it is actually to take from Irvine and their life science centers and incorporating those into camps and having all camps have those life science centers so that
Nice.
you're teaching them these skills regardless of the merit badge, that
Yep.
they're just earning these skills at camp as a part of the program.
Yep.
And then that'll build the baseline for push for the sustainability merit.
No, that's great because the summit's going to be a best practice place, but not everybody's going to get to go there. So, the idea is to sort of take the best practices or the demonstrations at the summit or other places and bring that down to local camps so you can see it if you don't go outside of your town. Good idea. Okay, other ideas? So how many people have sustainability in their heart instead of their head now? I want to see the hands again. Did I change anybody's mind yet? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What do you think of the ecological overshoot video? Have you ever seen that before? Is that a good way to pose the problem? It's hard to debate that there's one Earth, and if you have more and more people and they keep acting the same way, that you're going to have problems pretty soon. Yeah.
The place you can go online to actually do calculate your footprint.
Yep.
Is public. It's a public website.
Yep.
I mean that to me that would be a good thing to put into a merit badge or a young ranks requirement. Just go online, find out your usage. And
It's actually in the merit badge book right now. Page 85 is the Global Footprint Network website. And you can calculate what a wonderful idea. Do you want to know what my carbon footprint is? Or what my global footprint is? Mine is 8.3 Earths because I fly a lot. So if I take away all my flights and I get an electric car and I get solar for my roof, I get down to about 3 Earths. And the average U.S. citizen is at 4 or 5 Earths. So it's hard to get to 1. So electric cars, solar panels, video conferencing. I mean, there's probably a dozen things you can do that make a pretty big difference. What kind of food do you get local food or not? Don, you want to rattle off some others? Got to give up meat. Yeah.
I'd also add a greater sense of urgency.
Absolutely.
Because you can currently right now go through the entire scouting program, and if you earn environmental science merit badge, you can skip over sustainability merit badge. So you can become an Eagle Scout and go through the program and never have this conversation.
Yep.
So if a tenderfoot requirement was figure out your family's carbon footprint,
great,
then they've had that conversation.
Yep.
And then in terms of the video you asked about, I'd seen it before actually, and it's one of those think global, act local kind of attitudes. Because you watch that whole video and you go, wow, that's bad.
Yep.
And then you throw your plastic bottle in the trash.
Yep.
Because it's almost too much to hit an individual with.
Yep.
So when I think of individuals and Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and something immediate in their homes, that's what I think will hit them better.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about the merit badge book is, there's probably 30 things that you can do in your home that make a difference. So if you go through that, but I take your point.
So I just had a thought. It's sort of scary, but if the summit's here next year, since we met the chef and he's pretty good.
Yep.
There was a vegetarian option that you could order for.
Nice.
But if the option on your registration was, regular food or the vegetarian or the One Earth menu.
There you go. I like that.
Would you choose it? And if you did, would you like it? But it might be quite enlightening for us to have a One Earth menu at this meeting to find out what it would really look like or mean, and maybe even have a more open dialogue with the chef about how he chose what he chose and how the footprint was deliberate and why the guy sitting beside you that's eating that steak last night, his footprint's 4.
Yeah. That's an awesome idea.
I think that also goes in line with like portion sizes and overall health as well. I'm sure the One Earth menu would be a better portion size for you than a standard meal size would be.
Yeah.
A classic America, our portion sizes are giant.
Yeah, how many calories is in the One Earth meal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How many calories? Okay, anybody else? Yeah.
Like 6 years ago, you felt like this. I felt so. First time I speak out this entire convention. One suggestion and one question. I think that whoever, including myself, became sustainability merit badge counselor still don't really know how to proceed it. This book is really, really good. But still, if we can get proper training,
Yep.
we'll have more confidence.
That's a good idea. So I've done personally 2 merit badge midways or merit badge universities on sustainability merit badge, and we did it at the Jamboree for 9 days. So what I'll do is I'll work with the Jamboree team and put out a one or 2 page suggested sort of outline and flow that you could use that lets you do 6 requirements at the 4-hour training and gets them started and sort of shows you how to lay it out, you know, the videos you could use, et cetera. You can change to anything else you want to do as well, but that just gives you something to start with. So we'll do that.
Okay, and then the question is, National Scout Jamboree, that's 2017.
Yep.
What is the approach? Are you going to do the setup is similar to the 2013 or?
I don't know.
You don't know.
All I know is I've put some thought into how sustainable was the last one and what would be possible with the next one without a lot of effort, and talking with Brian and Dan about, you know, what can we do, what do we want to do.
And then when it comes to the World Scout Jamboree,
Yep.
that's the sustainability merit badge is only designed for Boy Scouts of America.
Yep.
Right? How you are going to adopt?
That's a great question too. I don't know.
Okay, and that's far, far away. So I'm thinking
Yep.
if you can do trial next World Scout Jamboree, if not in America, next year.
Yeah, in Japan.
Yeah.
Okay, we talked about that. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Super. So, okay, any other comments or suggestions?
Cub Scouts.
Yep,
We need to do this heavy with Cub Scouts.
yep,
It needs to be indoctrinated in Cub Scout day camps into the Cub Scout program, even though
Yep.
they just revamped it.
yep,
We do it again.
yep, okay. Totally. Any thoughts on exploring and venture? I mean, should there be sustainability explorer posts or sustainability venture crews? Or does that not work? Okay. If there's nothing else, I would really love, Don and I will sit over here. I'd really love to have anybody that wants to help with any of these things come up and, you know, let's get your cards and tell us what you're interested in, because we're going to start populating committees and stuff here soon. So, okay, so hey, thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it. And